Sunday, as always, a great day to be looking at the very high term timeframes for Bitcoin. And because it is a very boring Sunday as usual, when we get into the kind of macro scale right here, looking at those higher term timeframes, we're going to be going over a fractal, the good old fractals. Now, this isn't just going to be copying and pasting price action from one area to the next. I think that's absolute 100% hogwash, boulder dash, nonsense. But I do think that things can be mediated with mathematics that are, of course, facilitated by using indicators. So in this case, we're going to be going over, something that is very interesting between about 2019, 2020-ish region, kind of where Bitcoin spent the majority of time there, and what Bitcoin's doing essentially as of right now. So with that in mind, let's just go into the chart view right in over here and just get right on into it. So first things first, I want to start off this story with kind of the overall scale of things. And the overall scale of things is that Bitcoin put in the cycle lows over here in 2018, as you can see, and similar over here in November of 2020 that we did see last year. Now, after that, it does look like Bitcoin went on to put in first this higher low right here and this higher low right here. Okay, so these are the documentable things that we can, hold on to. Again, not just like, copying and pasting price action, but actually looking for very clear indications, of what was actually happening, which trend is probably the most strong of these things. Then you get your first major rally above that green 55 exponential moving average happens right here, and yet again right here, chops around, and in this case, this is where things get a little bit more muddy, if you will. But I would say that because in 2018, 2019's cycle over here, Bitcoin was a less liquid asset. There were less people trading it. It was more volatile by nature. You did get more exaggerated moves both to the upside and the downside, and that's what we've seen from cycle to cycle. Actually, the moves to the upside are they've been diminishing over time, and the moves to the downside have also been diminishing over time as well. In some cases, more rapidly than others. But as you can see, the current cycle that Bitcoin is in right here does seem to be a little bit more of a muted response to what we did see basically in this cycle over here of 2020. So when I go back into it, we can see that, yes, Bitcoin spent some time above that green 55 and then gets that first major correction, coming off of, the highs of 2018 right here, where Bitcoin did live below that green 55 for the first time. And in this case, this is where things get a little bit more interesting, I do think, because that would be akin to what we did see on the bank failure that was back in March of 2023, where Bitcoin had that quick move to the downside, about 19,500, and then immediately back onto the upside. Similar to what we did see over here, but just over a long-term time scale, as you can see. So here's the thing. In 2019, obviously, we had the Rona dump, right, which was a black swan. And in that case, that implies that, it was a unforeseen and sort of, extremely irregular event, if you will, a 10 sigma event, if you want it in mathematical terms. So what does that essentially mean? It essentially means that it's extremely unlikely. And if we are kind of looking from cycle to cycle, yes, behavior does rhyme, certainly. We can see that things are, they have their same sort of phases. Doesn't look necessarily the exact same. In fact, none of them literally have, but the phases are very similar. And in this case, I do think that we're looking kind of at a similar phase over here as we are over here. Now, this so far in 2023, we have not seen a black swan just yet, or we've not seen anything that's, I would say, super significant other than that bank failure. Yes, people are going to point to the, to the current ongoing war in the Middle East, but that's not really unforeseen. I mean, as of right now, we saw the initial reaction. That is where you would have expected, something like this to be happening. I think, of course, that's, a point of contention if you want to, criticize this analysis, which is fair enough. It is a little bit more of a speculative analysis, I would say, than I usually like to get into on this channel. But as of right now, we have not seen that. Now, what could be, still unforeseen within this? Well, I think a lot of people are expecting this to get worse. I think a lot of people are expecting this to proliferate. And, what can make it worse? I don't know, maybe nuclear war, obviously. But then again, it's like, you don't have a counterparty for your, for the downside of this asset. So it's just like, who cares? Like we're all dead. So who cares? But my point is that, I do think that as Bitcoin kind of chops around this green 55 exponential moving average in the current segment from 2023, that is similar to what we're seeing in the beginning to mid portion of 2020, where Bitcoin chops around that green 55. Again, if you were to kind of negate what happened during the Rona time and just kind of draw a straight line through here, because that's essentially what did happen. When Bitcoin ended the year at 2019, it is essentially where it ended the year, or ended the summer of 2020. All of that price action in between during those Rona times was just erased. It was more or less sideways, and Bitcoin didn't really start to do anything out of the ordinary until late 2020, fourth quarter of 2020, actually, which is kind of what we're at right now. Anyways, so as Bitcoin kind of, chops around that green 55, I would say that, hey, it is mimicking or rhyming, I would say, with this price action over here. And while in the short term, I do still think that Bitcoin could very easily come back down to these lows that we did see in September. I don't have strong opinions on that, but as long as it's maintaining these higher lows, very similar to what we did see over here, coming after the Black Swan event with this higher low right here, and then this successive higher low right here in September. So if I put on my drawing tools, I want to now put this in indicator format, and we can look at the hash ribbons down here. Now, the hash ribbons have fired off most recently in August of 2023. Why is that relevant? Because anytime that we have seen the hash ribbons fire off, the low prior to those hash ribbons firing off was the low before Bitcoin never, closed below it ever again, actually ever, except for 2 times out of 15. So 15 total iterations, 2 times where that was not true. Where was one of those times not true? It was actually before Rona times over here, so that is where it did get negated. And then after that, it was actually more recently in 2021, Bitcoin printed the hash ribbons right here, or the hash ribbons buy signal right here, I should say. It did go on to make new all-time highs first, actually, 60% plus move. But then, about a year later, it did close below those lows. Absolutely. So in those 2 instances out of 15, it was negating. Let me just double check that 15 is correct. Okay, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Working on number 16 right now. Yeah. So, higher probability in favor of that. And you can see that as long as Bitcoin is kind of maintaining above that green 55, well, that is essentially where we would expect that higher low to come in if we are going to kind of compare this price action over here to what's going on in the more recent times over here. And of course, again, Bitcoin just got that blue buy signal over here, which would imply that about $25,000 should theoretically not be closed below if this rhyme is going to continue with its time. And you know what I just did there. It's very clever, actually. It's extremely clever, in fact. It's the most clever thing I've done in the past week before my last rhyme, which almost got me banned. But more importantly, again, if Bitcoin does close below that $25,000 low, it is probably crash time. Next target's like $23,000 and below there. It's like, who the fuck knows? But yeah, until that happens, I'm still running with the same thesis that, it's a higher probability that Bitcoin grinds its way out sideways here. Yeah, it might retest these lows in the upper / mid 25s, but as long as there's no closing lower lows than $25,000, well, just more likely, statistically speaking. Anyways, moving on now, we can get into just a quick observation of the exponential moving averages as well. I think that they also kind of get this rather just succinctly here. Again, coming off of this major dump in Rona times on heavy volume, the only thing that we really see that is somewhat comparable over here is, of course, that the bank failures, which actually was probably the closest thing that we did see to a black swan. That really was an indication of like real concern. But fair enough. After that, you can see that Bitcoin did get the silver cross on the 5-day time frame. Again, that yellow 21 above the green 55, and did put in, a kind of like this similar sort of V-shaped recovery, followed by, a very boring period, but very constructive period of higher lows right here. And what do you know? Bitcoin does the same thing over here. Very boring, slightly higher high right here, slightly higher low right here, still maintaining that silver cross. And again, Bitcoin come a little bit bit down there and still maintain it. Just don't want to see it below basically September lows. That's where things start to fall apart, and you're going to see me become a pretty massively nasty bear. Pretty nasty bear, at least down to 23 after that, but I think things could get much worse, actually, if that were to happen. Just personal opinion. Anyways, yep, so we've gone through that. I do want to, once again, bring out the HPDR bands here. Again, we're going to be debuting this indicator, along with actually many others, in just a grand package for all of the caretaker jewels, all of the caretaker, the care pack. Probably around end of month is I think where things are slated as of right now. But also something of interest here. So first things first, I'll just go over the relationship between what we're seeing right here with that fractal, and then also just the relevancy of what it's doing as of right now. So in this case, you can see that Bitcoin is kind of riding the bottom side of the blue 50% of historic returns range lows. And you can see that Bitcoin has actually just been, filling out this whole range here basically since the end of August, right? Where this dump happened after that last slightly higher high that Bitcoin did put in just under $32,000. And that dump initially, as you can see on this major massive wick, got all the way down to that dark green zone over here. Remember that because we're going to call back to it in a second. Now, if I go back to the same sort of price action that we did see again coming off of 2020, well, what do you know? Where is it actually? We do see this higher high right here, slightly higher high. Yes, okay, comes down, crashes all the way to the, to the deep end of the deep green zone, and then recovers itself sideways, continues to ride up that, the blue sort of channel here, and well, higher lows it was throughout the whole way. In fact, this price action right here kind of reminiscent of what Bitcoin's doing right now that I recognize it too, which would imply that Bitcoin, might not even come back down below like 26,200. In fact, if the blue channel is anything to go off of as of right now, I mean, Bitcoin's already on it, so it would be implying that this would be a good place for a bounce. If not, then yeah, it probably does come down at least to 26. I would assume, maybe like upper to mid 25s. And that's where things get a lot more interesting, because that can really destroy the long-term bullishness from this particular area that I would be considering as of right now. Anyways, yeah, what else can we look at? We can look at stochastic momentum, I guess. We're already here, so might as well. Weekly time frame will continue to the upside as long as Bitcoin closes today above 25,850. I will say that this one is starting to look a little bit weak, not to use like a bad pun, but you get what I mean. It doesn't look like a super strong read right here. I'm very curious to see where this pivot coming into tomorrow night's tomorrow's open. Just because if this starts to move up a lot, that's going to be a little bit concerning for Bitcoin. Because it is kind of struggling here. Anyways, we can go down to the 5-day time frame now as well. 5-day time frame is already at 26,300. So, again, I could very easily see Bitcoin coming back down around there. Really wouldn't be asking for too much. And keep in mind that we still have this, this 5-day volatility versus stochastic momentum signature baking in there somewhere, man. The 5-day volatility now is even lower than it was before. It's the lowest that it's literally at 0 percentile. 0 percentile. The last time it was at 0 percentile was January. Has there been any other 0 percentiles? Did this ever hit 0 here? Got very close in that same fractalish area that we did see over here for a very long time, by the way, all the way from June to essentially August. So multiple months there. And other than that, the 5-day time frame really not seen that many periods of like 0 percentile. Here we got 2016, we got 2015 kind of, but yeah, more so this one again, coming after that, the end of cycle recovery, and as Bitcoin just trudged along going sideways and, well, putting in those higher lows, most importantly, around that yellow 21 exponential average. So other than that, we don't see any other times where it was actually that low. Anyways, going on to the 2-day time frame, it's going to be headed down as long as Bitcoin's below 27,750. So I do still kind of lean towards the downside in the short term. If I had to pick a side, daily time frame also showing downside below 27,550. 12-hour time frame going to be showing actually up from the critical zone here, 26,750. Bitcoin's just a ball sack here above that as of right now. 6-hour time frame is also going to be actually up above 26,750. 4-hour time frame is going to be down below 26,9. This is just not helpful. And hourly is 26,850. So unfortunately, not too much to be made off of that. Not anything super obvious, at least from what I'm looking at. But ultimately, I suspect that is this next week going to be the week of humongous volatility? If it is, it's probably going to be at the downside, to be fair. If it is, I think if Bitcoin's going to end up being bullish from here, you're probably waiting until end of October minimum, and somewhere between end of October and early November, I suspect that's when Bitcoin would probably resume. But in the more near term, if volatility starts to tick up, it's actually going to start to favor the bear odds, I suspect. Anyways, I am going to end things right there. I'm going to end my life as well because we've been looking at this non-interesting asset for so long now. What else could we be looking at with our lives? Maybe traditional markets, maybe stonks, maybe Forex. But yeah, this is a good place for me to be leaving off. Hopefully that was in some way helpful. I want to wish you the best as always. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully tomorrow.